kids don't, yeah. Frankie, so Tommy did actually make it back in time. He's down at Stevens digging for bottles.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And Frankie's fishing.
Well, that's a bummer.
What are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So just try not to, like, if you move, like switch, just go a little bit slow because it'll.
Can we do like ASMR?
Yes.
I hate those videos.
It's gotten so trendy.
And painful. Painful. Like, and it's, I understand, to each their own. For some people, that's maybe very satisfying, very soothing, whatever. It gives me like violent urges.
Really?
And you know, like, I'm not like, am I a violent person? Like, probably, like, no.
I mean, a little bit.
You know what? I am.
I think you mask it with sarcasm.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And I am incredibly easygoing until I'm not. But what's weird is that, like, I don't feel like I stuff it down. Like, I don't feel like I, get irritated and like don't let myself get irritated. But I don't necessarily think that means that that's not happening. I think I'm just a middle child.
It's just
who is
you've had to stuff things down so much you don't even know you're stuffing things down.
Yeah.
Until suddenly it's right there.
Yeah.
So welcome, Liz Mazzilli.
Thank you. I am welcomed.
Can you start by telling us what you do and your official title and your background a little bit?
Sure. So I am a therapist, mental health therapist. I am licensed. So my title is licensed mental health therapist, LMHC. I have a private practice. I have a very small I have a growing private practice. It was very small for some time, and now I'm very slowly.
Size doesn't always matter, Liz.
That's what you do. I do good work. I do. Yeah.
This is a family show.
I do good work. I as a therapist. I am a good therapist with my small caseload. So oh man, how far? So I work as a therapist. I do have a private practice. Prior to that, I worked at a clinic in Marshfield, and I loved working there. That was such a good experience, in a lot of ways. It was very much, so it was a privately owned clinic. So it wasn't like a group practice. It was a community, mental health clinic, but it was privately owned. So it wasn't part of a bigger agency. And we had an intensive outpatient program there. And so there was really not a lot of turnover with the clinicians because we had a DBT program, dialectical behavior therapy. We worked primarily with people with borderline personality. So there was a lot of substance abuse, although I didn't do any of the substance abuse work. I tried. My supervisor at the time encouraged me to take on a couple of clients with addiction, just, to get some experience and, just confirm if I really didn't like it. I am a horrible substance abuse clinician. I am not good at it. It's great to know what you're good at. Sometimes it's even better to know what you're not good at. I am far too I'm just far too gullible and it's, so I am not likely to pick up on some of the cues, and I don't want to pick up on some of the cues, and it's really hard work and it's really sad work, and I'm not good at it. So I don't do it. But we had a lot of substance abuse work, but then a lot of suicidality and, probably trigger warning, and that type of work. So I loved it. I really loved it. And then when I had kids, I needed something that was a little bit less intense. And so I started up my private practice and kind of did both for a little while. But then, even though it was the exact same job, just in two different locations, and I mean, right down to like the paperwork that I used in my practice, like I stole from the clinic. I just photocopied it, and that's what. So literally everything was the same.
Copyright laws.
I don't think they copyrighted them, so I think we're good. Yeah, no, I think we're okay. It was too much, like having the 2 different locations. And so I left the clinic and I just did my own practice. So that's what I do now. I don't really have a specialty per se. I used to do a lot of work with adolescents, not as much anymore because I cut back on my evening and afternoon hours.
So is it more adults now?
More adults now. Yep. I am, now that I am ramping my caseload back up again, I would love to start working with adolescents again, but it's funny. It's like daunting because I haven't worked with many of them for so long. Like, it's not the work that's daunting. It's the culture. Like, I don't know what's relevant for them. I don't know like what apps they use, which sounds silly, but it actually is like,
well, that's their whole life. Like everything they do is social media and different apps and how they talk to each other, and it changes the way they communicate.
Yeah. And it changes the risk level too. And like all of that. So I don't know. So I might get back into working with adolescents. We'll see. But what's actually really funny is that, without even meaning to, I am starting to develop a new specialty, and my caseload is being dominated, pleasantly so, by adult women with ADHD, most of whom were not diagnosed until adulthood. Some of them, like, I'm technically not qualified to diagnose. It's a neurological disorder, so I'm not technically qualified to diagnose that. But like, I'll be the person that says, hey, has anyone ever asked you about that? Like, maybe we should check that out, But it's amazing because they're just kind of all flocking to me somehow. I'm not advertising. I think I might actually be advertising it maybe as a specialty. I don't remember. But
is that, you're enjoying that?
I love
it.
Is
that like kind of your favorite?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is
because you're severely ADHD.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. It is the blind leading the blind, but it's fun. And it's, I don't know. You don't have to have firsthand experience with something in order to be able to help somebody with it. And I think that's the case, for anything. I don't have to have schizophrenia in order to, it's a bad example because I don't have a lot of experience with like the more severe, I don't have a lot of experience with like psychotic disorders, schizophrenia, that type of thing. But one does not have to have schizophrenia in order to be an effective therapist for somebody.
Right.
But I do think that with some things, I do think it does help give you a different perspective. Like with substance abuse, for example, a lot of really, really great substance abuse clinicians or like community support people, they are recovering addicts themselves.
Yeah.
And they get it. They know firsthand. Like they know what it's like, or at least their version of what it's like.
I think the person that you're helping, it's helpful for them to know that you understand firsthand what they're feeling and where they're coming from, instead of like, well, I read in a book that.
Right.
It's just, it's different. And then you're having people like get so vulnerable, and if they hit a point where they're frustrated, they can at least step back and be like, okay, but this person knows. And it's, they can't write it off if you're telling them something that they don't want to hear. It's like, well, what do you know anyway? Like, you're not really understanding what I'm saying. Like, no, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. They can still do that, and sometimes they do, but not as often.
Well, I would think in the back of their mind, they know, okay, she's right. But it's a defense mechanism to be like, you don't understand.
Well, and it's funny too, like with ADD in particular, it's the conversation in the therapy session is like, whenever I would like, hear about different therapeutic techniques, or if you would like maybe not so much in grad school, because at that point I just thought that I was terrible at everything. And I probably actually was at that point. But, like in different trainings, if you would see like videos of like a, therapy session or whatever, I always just think like, man, their sessions are so organized, and they just like, I don't know, they have like a beginning, a middle, and end. It's just so organized. My sessions with my ADD clients, we are all over the place, but like we match each other. Like we follow each other. We like, it
works.
It works. I think it does.
They keep coming back.
They keep coming back. So there you go. So that's me. That's what I do.
What is the difference between ADD, ADHD? Because growing up, it was always ADD.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now it's like a very specific, I still say ADD because it's just easier.
That's me too. So technically ADD doesn't exist anymore. It's ADHD. And not that it doesn't exist anymore. The name, the title, the diagnosis doesn't exist anymore. So it was switched to ADHD. So it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And there's different subtypes. So the DSM, the diagnostic manual, which there's I have a lot of issues with the diagnostic criteria for ADHD, how it's diagnosed. It's basically when you look at the diagnostic criteria, it's based on like a very small subset of, pool of people with ADHD. It's based on the majority of symptoms that present in most young boys from like 8 to 11-ish maybe with that particular type of ADHD. It presents very differently in adolescent, like female children, assigned female at birth, children, adolescents, adults.
Right.
Like it's just, it has a very different presentation, but it's my little soapbox. But ADD, ADHD, there's 3, I guess, main subtypes. There's 2 main subtypes, and then the third is having a combination of the 2. So there's the predominantly inattentive type. So you have a hard time. People will say, oh, I have a hard time paying attention, a hard time focusing. Hard time focusing is actually really quite accurate. It's not that you can't pay attention. It's more that you can't regulate your attention. So you can't really tune things out. You can't always choose what
you're paying attention to way too many things. Like I'm paying attention to you right now, but also the people walking by and the truck going by and the flag blowing.
And do you find it works better to not really fight that and just kind of let yourself notice the people, but you're still when you fight it and just try to.
Yeah. Because when I fight it and just try to focus on you, I'm actually distracted by trying to fight it. And then 20 seconds passes and I realize I didn't actually hear a word you said.
Yep.
But if I let it float, I'm fine until I start getting worried that you're thinking that I'm not paying attention because I'm...
Yes.
So ultimately what distracts me in either scenario is the worry. Of what the other person is thinking.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. It's why in school, I remember this, it was all of a sudden this became a thing in high school when some of the teachers would let you doodle and would encourage you if it helped you pay attention. And I remember all of a sudden it was so you realize that that's a thing. That's cool. It's the same kind of thing.
In elementary school now they have those wobble chairs, which I thought were super cool.
That was my
favorite thing. And you can flip it where it's flat and it doesn't wobble, or you can turn it so that it does wobble.
That was the coolest thing when they built that new school.
Yeah.
That was the coolest part of it. However many millions of dollars it cost to build that school, it was all worth it.
I sat on
chairs.
those during parent teacher conferences and it helped me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the ones, the tall ones, I liked the.
Yeah, you can do that. You
yeah.
Can do
yeah. I talk with my hands a lot. I'm Irish. I'm not Italian. But, the tall ones that had the foot thing that could swing. Those ones were great.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So this is the most ADD conversation about defining ADD.
I do want to get to that podcast that I sent you.
Yes.
And get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So there's the inattentive type, and then there's the hyperactive impulsive type. And
which is it fair to say that tends to be where more the boys lean toward?
Typically
younger
but
boys,
it's
because
also
of just the energy level.
Yes, but it's also interesting. I think that's probably the case. This is where there's so many rabbit holes you could go down with this though too, because you look at socialization and maybe more girls actually would, so there's an argument that it's not necessarily that girls don't have the hyperactivity, impulsivity, but because of the social conditioning, like it's not socially acceptable, even from a young age, for little girls to be running around, climbing on things, jumping, like being physical with each other. So they turn it more inwards. And so a lot of times, like you'll get more of like the kind of like the hyperactive, like worry thoughts and like perseverating, or like, like kind of like jiggling, like jiggling your foot, or like, like chewing on like the inside of your mouth, or like little things like that, is how it plays out, I think, sometimes in girls. Cause like that's just that social conditioning. So it's kind of an interesting question that I don't necessarily think that we have an answer for. I think that's the typical idea of a little boy, especially a little boy with ADHD. But yeah, right. So and then the combined type is literally you meet criteria for both the inattentive type and the hyperactive impulsive type. So, and what's interesting is too, it diagnostically speaking, so my older son, Frankie, has ADHD combined type. When he was diagnosed, when he was diagnosed, I remember the neurologist said that he was leaning more like predominantly inattentive type, but he said that he had a feeling that he was probably combined type, but that he, because of his age, was given a little bit more leeway. And he was saying that like it was age appropriate for during the interview for Frankie to be kind of fidgety and like just more active. But he was saying, as he gets older, you might see that he doesn't outgrow that, which is exactly what happened. That, Frankie's he is more inattentive than hyperactive impulsive, but he definitely has the combined presentation.
That's interesting.
Yeah. But I will usually like
kind of use it interchangeably.
I use it interchangeably for exactly that reason. ADD is
Please hold.
Please hold.
I don't know why these are doing this. It was totally fine. It did say on Amazon that it's a frequently returned item. I think I'm beyond the return period though, so.
Well, it's fine.
So I had sent you a podcast to listen to, and I can't remember the woman's name anymore. She was neuroscientist, right? No? What was she?
Well, that was the title. That was the title of the podcast. Said that she was a neuroscientist, and maybe,
I forget what she said she was in, but the idea was that we need to be very careful with labels, and this is something that I have been saying for a long time with labels, and just like with a lot of things now, everything is labeled. And I've been very anti-labels for a very long time, just because I do feel like it pigeonholes people, and in this whole, like, we live in a world of wanting to be inclusive and accepting of everything, and like breaking barriers, and women can do what men can do, and men can do what women, and all of these things. Then I feel like all the labels just go against all of that. But her whole thing was like self-diagnosis. She seemed to focus a lot on anxiety, which I felt, as I was listening to it, I felt like it was pretty different from the ADHD stuff. But her whole concept was like, our mind is incredibly powerful, and if we label ourselves with these things, it's like a death sentence, and we actually almost continue to reinforce it and make it worse when we could heal ourselves from it. And then like that continual reinforcement just almost becomes embedded in at the cellular level. And it becomes who we are, and we are not these things. We might have symptoms of these things.
I
guess I would ask first, like, did you agree with her, disagree with her, or somewhere in the middle?
I would say there were certain things that I disagreed very strongly. And then there were certain things that I agreed with.
I'm just going to find what it was called so that anybody who wants to actually listen to it can, so it's not totally vague and weird.
What I will say, I will kind of preemptively just say, no matter what anybody thinks about a program or a person or whatever, if something is helpful for you, then it's helpful for you.
So this was Dr. Caroline Leaf, top neuroscientist, How to Heal Your Brain and Body with Your Mind, from the School of Greatness podcast for anybody who wants to go listen to it.
So this is going to sound really snarky, and I don't mean it in a snarky way, but...
You're totally snarky.
So I did after maybe the first 15 minutes, maybe. I also should, before any of it, there were some things that I had kind of a hard time following. Okay. So there were a couple of things that I had a little bit of a hard time following her because I have a hard time sometimes with accents. I don't know. And she had a cool accent. She actually had a really, she was fun to listen to. Just her accent alone was fun to listen to. I don't know if I actually have auditory processing disorder or if it's symptoms of that. It's very often, there's a lot of comorbidity between that and ADHD, but I don't know if I actually have auditory processing disorder or if it's hard to focus my attention. So, whatever. But I have a hard time with accents. So there were some things that I had a hard time following because of her accent, which was lovely. So at one point, I forget at what point it was, but I paused it and I Googled her because I was like, what is this woman? What? Do I know nothing? Is my whole career a sham? So
I'm sorry that I sent that to you.
No, it's okay.
Again, I listened to about 10 seconds before I sent that to you.
Well, but here's the thing. So she had some really cool things to say, and I don't disagree with all of it, but I do want to point out. So I did a very quick, I don't know about research that she's done or whatnot. But I am a little bit leery of some of the claims that she made. Her degree, she's a speech and language pathologist. She's not a neurologist, not a psychologist, psychiatrist. She does speech language pathology. Now, I mean, there's a lot of neurology, there's a lot of crossover, and you don't have to have a degree in something in order to have done a ton of research and kind of hyper focus and become your own expert on it. So everything that she said might be completely true, and there was a lot of truth to a lot of things she said. There's when she started talking about things the way that our experiences and our reactions to our experiences going informing our body on a cellular level. It's interesting because there actually is a lot of research that shows how, our body holds on to trauma, for example. But I also feel like a lot of the stuff that she was saying, I was like, I don't really know if that's how it works. But I do think, absolutely. So when she was talking about, with diagnoses, for example, and this is where I paused and was like, wait a minute. Because when she was saying how, when you get a diagnosis, you're told you'll have this forever, you'll never get better. And I was like, what? I'm like, what? No, it's one of the first things. And she was talking about with anxiety. And I was like, one of the first things I tell most of my clients with anxiety is, first of all, I'm not going to tell you that you'll never experience anxiety again, because anxiety
Everybody
is
does.
right. Exactly. And I really so one of the things that she was talking about that I absolutely really liked, and is very much in line with the work that I do, and goes back to when I was in the DBT program.
She did differentiate between good therapists that
yes.
go down this road of
Yeah. Yep.
these feelings are normal feelings, and it's not a disease.
Right. Maybe it's that spot.
Oh my God.
So so she I will say, I think that I probably have a very skewed view, because most of the people that I've worked with, I think, really have been very good therapists.
Yeah.
And just like anything else, any field, there are people that are great at what they do. There are people that aren't so great with what they do. I do think, at least here in this area, the trend, I guess, for lack of a better word, seems to be more along the lines of what she's saying, how we need to be accepting of our emotions. We need to be able to feel our emotions, process our emotions. What actually I think, when she was talking about self-diagnosis and labels, I actually think there's more danger in the, you look on, it's a double-edged sword, but when you go on any social media and you'll see, people saying, you might have this if you have this symptom, this symptom, this symptom. And I think there's a lot of danger in that, no matter what it is, whether it's mental health, physical health, whatever, because a lot of these different symptoms, we all experience to some degree, or there could be a lot of overlap or whatnot. So it's, you got to leave the diagnosing, I think, up to
I do feel like when you're on social media, all of these people are like, I have ADHD, and all, it's frustrating. It's well, do you really know what it feels like, though?
Right.
And that's where, with her, she was focusing so much on anxiety with the examples. And I did agree with it, where it's all right, if you're walking around telling yourself I have anxiety, I have an anxiety disorder, I need anti-anxiety medication, then I do feel that does, you start associating yourself with this is who I am, and then you have a hard time in any setting because you're expecting this of yourself.
Well, and I think too, it's hard, because I think with diagnosis, it is really tricky, because absolutely, you don't want to identify as your diagnosis, no matter what it is. Even if it's a physical health, if you have some type of cancer, you are a person who has this.
You are not that thing.
Right. And I think that that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And there's a lot of, good work that happens around that and trying to undo that. At the same time, I also feel there's a lot of validation in getting a diagnosis, especially I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult. And when one of my coworkers at North River, when they first said, do you think, maybe you have ADHD? And it didn't exactly go quite like that. It was kind of funny. It was the assumption that I had it and that I knew I had it. And I was like, what?
How can you not know?
Right. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then the poor person was backpedaling. And I'm like, no. What? This is life-changing.
Tell
What
me
are you,
more.
right. Yeah. And it was amazing, because it for the first time meant that I wasn't lazy. I wasn't incompetent. I wasn't it was always so confusing, because I was incredibly bright. I was in all AP classes. And yet I remember AP US history. We would have a quiz every week on the chapter, and the chapters were 115 pages long, and huge textbook, and tiny print and not a lot of pictures. And I had a free period right before that, that period that I had history. And I wouldn't even start trying to read the chapter until the free period before, because I knew better. I knew I wouldn't be able to, but I would sit even in that free period, and I would just read the first paragraph over and over again. I just remember thinking I can't read. Obviously I can read. I love to read. And I just remember thinking I'm stupid. Well, I'm in all AP classes. Clearly I'm not stupid. But it's just that,
so what's going on?
Right. I'm not trying hard enough.
Am I just nuts?
Not trying hard enough. That was what it always came down to. I'm not trying hard enough. And so getting that diagnosis was so validating. So for me, for a long time, I really did focus a lot on the diagnosis, but in a good way, because it was like, yeah, no, like I am not a horrible friend. I struggle with object permanence, and if you're not right in front of me, I forget you exist. And then I remember you exist, and I'm utterly delighted because I love you and you're wonderful. and yeah, okay, so I might still be a terrible friend, but for different reasons. But it's hard. Like I feel like it's really tricky. I feel like you can't do away with diagnoses. It's also really helpful to organize, like, typically speaking, when you have a diagnosis, there tend to be a certain set of things that are helpful for that. So it's also really helpful from a treatment perspective. Right. So, we really can't do away with diagnoses. But I think that it's really easy to get pigeonholed with a diagnosis. It's really easy to, identify, over-identify as your diagnosis. Use it as an excuse. Have other people use it as an excuse and just kind of write you off or not push you or challenge you because of that. So I do, I'm torn with her critique of diagnoses because, what she was saying, if and when that happens, yes, like that's not okay. That's not great. But I also, it's kind of like there has to be radical acceptance of, like, yes, I do have this thing. Like, I do have this thing. This is something that I struggle with. Doesn't mean that it's always going to be like this. Doesn't mean that this is who I am. I really, really, really liked, and I think that this is something that, especially with anxiety, that notion of, like, right, anxiety itself is not bad. Anxiety is a very, very useful emotion. If we did not have anxiety, we would never get a single thing done and we would probably die. Like, we wouldn't survive as a species.
So she had said anxiety is your body's way of telling you need to pay attention to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's when you almost pay too much attention to that and you don't take the next step of doing the work. And I liked that. Like, you have to do the work. You have to acknowledge it and then ask the question of, well, where is this coming from? And dig into it versus just looking at it as a problem and then trying to make it go away. Right. And I think that's where I struggled with, like, I understood where she was coming from with the anxiety and I agreed with it. But then it was like, well, I disagree with it when you're discussing, like, ADHD. And then I'm like, well, is that only because I have ADHD? And
I don't think so. Because
it was like, ADHD isn't a feeling. And so many people will tell me, like, I would never guess that you do, like, now. Mm-hmm. Like, well, there's been a lot of years of putting in the work. Yeah. But it's still a struggle daily. And it's not a feeling the way that, like, feeling anxiety is.
Right. Well, and the thing, like, one of the things too, like, she was saying, I don't know, like, she switched very quickly to anxiety. So I felt like this was implied. And again, the accent, maybe I missed it. But it seemed like she was implying that, like, you didn't have to have ADHD forever. Like, ADHD was not something that you had to have. Like, that you, like, if you were diagnosed with it, like it wasn't.
Because she was saying that there is to this day no test or anything that can, like, definitively say, like, this is what you have, the way that you can show that you have, like, cardiovascular disease or diabetes or something like that.
And that's, I mean, it's interesting because there are some, there are some, I don't know, I don't remember if it's genes or gene mutations, or there is some genetic evidence, but it's not like a clear, like, like trisomy 13 or something. It's not like like one specific, and everybody with this group of symptoms has this gene deletion or, whatever. But there are some, like, genetic findings with ADHD. The problem is we don't have any one like definitive thing, and
we don't necessarily have the technology to.
Yeah, doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
But we know definitively that some people learn better and focus better by fidgeting. And some people don't. And we know definitively that some people are very overstimulated quickly and annoyed by noises and things quickly, and some people aren't. And so it's like you start looking at those things, like those things are real and they exist, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that person. And maybe we've kind of put the label of it's ADHD on certain things.
It's hard because I think that I heard this, I don't remember where I heard this, if I read it or if I saw it online or something, but it was this theory that people with ADHD or like maybe just like neurodiversity in general, that from an evolutionary perspective, like so we notice things, right? Like because we can't tune different things out, we notice things. We're very, very, very good at pattern recognition, like uncannily good sometimes at pattern recognition. I'm saying I am kind of lumping together. It's like neurodiversity, so ADHD, spectrum disorders. But I remember seeing something once about how, like in like kind of hunter gatherer, like our like ancestors way far back, how we would actually be very useful. Like we would be the people that would like notice first if like all of a sudden all of the birds in the woods were quiet. And so maybe there's a predator or, like stuff like that. Or even like hunter gatherer, like we will notice like, oh, here's this type of berry, like whatever, like, cause we just notice
things. The details, the small details.
We're very good noticers. And so the thought is that, it's not that there's anything wrong with the way that our brains operate and the way that we operate. It's just different. And this world is largely designed for neurotypical people. There are, I think more neurotypical people than neurodivergent people, although who knows?
Right.
But that's really only when it's a problem, when it's like we have to, like we're the square peg that's trying to fit in a round hole. So like for school, kids in school, like it's really tricky. And, different jobs and stuff, like even, I tell my clients, like I tell all my clients, but like my clients with ADHD, like play to your strengths, like especially like my younger clients, if they're, trying to look for a career or whatnot, you're not, that school was a struggle for you. Well, you're probably not going to want to like have a desk job.
Right.
Or if you do, it's going to be, doing something that you're really interested in that could almost be like a hyper-focused thing for you.
Yeah, but that only lasts for so long. And then once you've mastered it, forget it. It's just
then you got to
boring
move on to the next thing. Yes, right.
That's why I was like, I knew once I got diagnosed, which was my second attempt at college, it was like, I understood like, okay, I need to be doing something that is both physical and mentally challenging.
Yeah.
Like I need to be challenged mentally, but I need to be able to move. I can't be behind a desk. It's not going to work.
Yep.
And like I went to college for graphic design, and like the amount of just anger that would fill me, like sitting there trying to learn Photoshop just because I felt so stuck, or it was like, I can't be behind this desk anymore staring at this stupid thing and like zooming in, but now like I do a lot of that stuff for my business and it's fine because it's in spurts.
Right.
And I can like get hyper focused and do it, and I love it.
Yeah. And you're motivated because you see like the benefit for you, or it's you're interested in some aspect of it, even if it's not particular the task itself.
Right. Like I don't care. It's not like I'm enjoying the work. Like I care about the end result in the
Photoshop.
Moment. I hate it, but I will get so intensely involved in it when my mission is this particular project, and then it's done.
Yep.
But to do it as a full-time job, like there was nothing that drove me like to such levels of being irate. Like I wanted to throw the computer out the window, like wanted to just like crawl out of my skin.
That's one of the things that I think people also don't understand is that the boredom it's not just boredom. It is a visceral, like, anger. Like, it is distressing. Like with, ADHD or, a number of different things, I would imagine, but it's not just, okay, you're bored. This is boring. You should get it done. No, it becomes agitating. Like, boredom in ADHD is actually distressing. And
yeah, you get a very physical response.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And like listening to her talk about like how you can work through it, and it's, I don't know, like it's a feeling, and you have to kind of figure out like, where is it coming from? Like, well, when I'm reading a book and I'm like, dyslexia is in the same sandbox with ADHD. Yeah. Like, I'm not dyslexic, but I have moments and symptoms of dyslexia. Mm-hmm. Like when I'm reading, and the only job I've ever been fired from was a bank because I would transpose numbers all the time, but wouldn't know.
Yep. Well, and what's interesting with reading, I think, because if you get enough of the letters right, you can kind of fill in the gaps and translate it.
Yep.
But with numbers, I do that.
Because when I worked at the bank, it was like you got cash from people to deposit, and you had to put in how many ones, how many fives, how many tens, blah, blah, blah. And I would transpose it all the time because I was going so fast, and everyone thought I was awesome because I would blast through the line so fast. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was just like in my head of myself all the time. Yeah. So I'm trying to think, like, listening to her with like what you have to do. I'm like, well, there wasn't a moment that I could be like, well, let me like sit and discover like, where is this stemming from? Like, no, you're.
Well, but like, but that also gets to the like.
I guess I could sit back and say like, well, clearly my brain is moving too fast, so I need to.
But that's
zen it
why
out.
Too. There's a difference between, and that gets back to why, like when I had said before, like I've made the same mistake before. I've misspoken the same way before. I'm not qualified to diagnose ADHD because ADHD is not a mental health disorder. It is a neurological disorder. It's in the DSM for mental health. I guess, I don't know. Maybe it is
what's the difference between a mental health disorder and a neurological disorder?
I don't know if I'm going to get this right. I don't know if there's an official answer that I'm going to give the wrong one.
Should I ask Google?
Maybe, but the way that I like, so a neurological disorder is more in terms of, I was going to say the neurology of how your brain works.
A brain chemical thing? Versus...
Not even necessarily chemically. It's more with how the brain functions. Now, obviously, with emotions, that has a lot to do with how our brain functions as well. But with emotions, like, so, depression, anxiety, mania, agitation, I don't know, any, you look at the mental health, like the typical emotion-based mental health issues that people, struggle with. These are things that are more easily influenced by like our thoughts, our behaviors.
What she was talking about,
more
the
of
mind,
a full body, right?
The mind versus the brain, and the mind controls things.
Yes, and that is more. I think that's kind of the difference, and maybe that's why she didn't focus as much on ADHD. Because
I did feel like that he was trying to keep bringing it back to ADHD, and then she wasn't telling him no, that it's different, but she kept going back to like anxiety and stuff.
Well, because I think it's like similar to when you look at how, with like spectrum, like autism spectrum disorders, like that's more in terms of the neurology, like how their brains are working and how,
and like dyslexia and like there's.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned a while back to me that like we were talking about chemical imbalances and like chronic depression and things.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned there was like new research that was kind of showing that everything we thought we knew about particularly depression and maybe anxiety with like chemical imbalances is actually.
So thank you for reminding me about that, because I forgot. I saw like, that was one of the things, like I saw the headline, and like one of my friends had like told me something about it. And then I meant to read more about it, and I forgot to.
Did you just like spit out a headline to me and it wasn't actually true?
No, it is true. No, it is true. It is true. Apparently. So our thought process in terms of like depression, like what depression was, it was always like people would say it's a chemical imbalance, right?
Yeah, like you have low serotonin or low dopamine or whatever.
Yep. And a lot of the like the typical antidepressants that we use are based on, adjusting neurotransmitters in some way, either, like the SSRIs, they basically, like the way that they work is they let the serotonin kind of hang out more before it's gathered back up, or it's all based on this idea that there's a chemical imbalance. And apparently and this is where I don't remember, and I don't remember what like the little blurb said and what when my friend had explained it, like what it was. And I want to go back and look, but I don't know if like the research was wrong. I don't think it was made up. Like, do you remember how like when the whole like MMR vaccines and autism and whatever, and then like the study turns out it was false, and like the data was false, and there's actually no study that links vaccines and autism, and because it was made up.
It's back in the news now. It's back in the news now. Or we won't go down that path.
Yeah, I know. And I don't know. I mean, again, it all comes down to like, maybe there is a link, but we haven't, but that study that everyone, kind of went crazy over, that was made up. But it's kind of, I don't remember if it was the same thing where like it was made up. I don't think so, because I feel like I would have remembered that. It's not true though. It's basically, from what I understand, that's not true in some way. But at the same time,
it's not. What part's not?
I'm sorry. The depression and chemical imbalance.
So it's not. So depression is not caused by a chemical imbalance.
Apparently, I need to do more research.
But I mean, this is a new thing. Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting though, and again, this is where like I really, like I say, I need to do more research. Like I want to, because I'm really curious about this.
Well, yeah, because then
why do antidepressants work?
Right.
Because for some people, they work really well. And that's the thing with medication. Medication for depression, for anxiety, medication for anything. Medication alone is really almost never good and effective. But sometimes medication is really necessary.
Yeah.
There are times like I'll work. It's interesting because with anxiety in particular, if you medicate anxiety like perfectly so you don't feel anxiety, as a therapist, I actually don't really like if my clients are seeing me for anxiety and they are on medication, but the medication like pretty much takes care of their anxiety, that doesn't really leave us much to work with. Like, I can teach you all of these different skills, but you don't really get practice utilizing them. And if you want to be on, medication for as long as you can, like that's okay. Like I'm also not going to tell you that that's not something that you should do. And that's if it works, if you don't have any negative side effects, okay. And there are also times in our lives when maybe it's not maybe we don't have the time and the energy and the ability or the financial ability to do the work. Maybe we do need right now a quick fix to get us through something.
Well, sometimes you just need to take the edge off. Like, I think about like everything that I've been dealing with the being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, like all the long COVID stuff, and being in so much physical pain all the time, and being told like, well, you need to be able to exercise more, and like that helps. But in that moment, it was like I literally was gaining weight from doing yoga because my body was in so much pain. It was causing so much inflammation.
That's awful.
But then finally getting on medication for it, it took the edge off enough that then I could do those things.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Sometimes
like I could do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things sometimes like I'll tell, like every once in a while I'll have a client with pretty significant anxiety and they really don't want to go on medication. And I'm all for that. Like I'm all for, okay, like let's try and do this ourselves. Like absolutely. Look, medication, like it can be a pain to remember to take. And sometimes there are side effects that aren't that great. And, and there's a copay or, like whatever. It's just like for whatever reason, like if you can do it without, awesome. But sometimes you can't, if your anxiety is so significant that it's preventing you from being able to do the work, then that's not like, you're not going to be able to.
I feel like there's like a hum when I talk. Do you hear like a little staticky hum when I'm talking? No? Okay. Don't. Sorry. Distraction. Yeah. On the flip side of that though, like sometimes like doing the work completely naturally is 99.9% of the time more expensive than the medication, and that's what's set.
Yeah.
Right? Like insurance doesn't cover going to yoga and learning to relax and going to the chiropractor and going like all these different things, even like gym memberships, like that's all becomes so expensive. If somebody has anxiety.
And thank you for bringing that up, because people will say like, oh, well, you know, but like insurance will cover therapy. And it's like, okay, yeah, you got to find somebody with availability in network and, you know, that you click with and everything. But yeah, insurance will cover therapy. But therapy alone, like that's not.
This is still recorded.
Okay. But that alone, therapy alone, if my clients are not getting physical exercise, if they're not getting outside, if they're not interacting with other people, like it's not just therapy. And yeah, this other stuff is expensive.
Yeah.
And
a gym membership can be, you say like $30 a month or whatever, and you go to yoga and that's however much, and you're going to the chiropractor, you need.
And then you look at food and you look at the impact that our diet has on our mental health, and you look at like processed foods, and that this is something I'm talking outside of my scope. I know like this is one of those things that like I know enough to know way too much, so I will not wax poetic on it. But absolutely, if we're eating a lot of processed foods and or if we're eating things that just for whatever reason, whatever's going on with our body, it's not right for our body, like learning, like even, you know, learning how to eat well, like learning how to cook food, you know, like these are things, and then buying good food. Like these are things that are not cheap.
Right.
You know, it's,
and it's a lot and not cheap and incredibly time consuming. So when you have somebody who's already struggling and stressed out and whatever their situation, they have kids, they're trying to work full time, all these things.
Yeah. And now you're gonna do something else.
Yeah. Now I have to go to the gym and I have to go grocery shopping and buy all the healthy things and try to cook all the healthy meals and also try to get my kids to eat the healthy meals and take care of them. And like it's so much. Well, and this isn't really helping our cause about any of it. Right. But I guess just.
Well, but then you also add to that too. I think then that it makes us also so vulnerable to, and this was one of the things too with the podcast that I was kind of like, so it seemed like, so she has this program, this 67-day magical program. She did say sometimes you'll need to do it.
63 days?
It was 60 something.
I think, because I remember her saying like it takes 63 days.
Yeah. It was probably. Yeah. It was 60 something. And so, you know, she was selling that. Now, in that program, there might be things that she's teaching that are wonderful, that are really helpful. But I am so sick of every time you go on, and okay, like, so I am a therapist and I have ADHD. So like, obviously, you know, and our phones listen to us and, you know, whatever. It's tailored to me. But every other post, no matter what platform I'm on, it's an ad, and it's something, it's selling some tool, whether it's a planner that's actually going to, you know, it's a planner designed for people with ADHD, and this will cure your executive dysfunction. I'm sorry. Do you know how many, I love planners.
I have so many.
Yes. Have any of them ever cured your executive dysfunction?
No.
No, because it can't be cured.
No.
And certainly not by a planner.
Actually like filled out more than like an eighth of any notebook or planner? No.
Well, right. So
actually, I have a post from, I don't know, a couple of months ago up with a new planner that I was in love with, and I thought it was going to fix my life. It didn't.
Spoiler alert.
If anyone wants it, you can just rip out the first few pages. Good as new.
Well, so it's and it's, you know, if it's not a planner, it's a program. It's this, it's that, and I'm sure, you know, like with all the different like fitness things, like the online fitness things. Now,
my husband makes fun of me. He's like, I do have to give you credit though. You do try all the things.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is,
and that just plays into our impulsive spending money and buying stupid crap.
Yes. Absolutely.
How many of these things do you buy at 11 o'clock at night scrolling on your phone?
All of them.
All of them.
But I also buy some really cool things at 11 o'clock at night, like my planters that are like the weird little people. And they have
the hair.
Yeah.
I love those.
So I'm somewhat of I don't know if you know this about me. I am somewhat of a trendsetter. I'll find something. It's okay. You're looking at me, but it's true. It's true. And I can give you all kinds of examples, and you can ask anyone in my family and they will tell you, no, it's actually like true. You see them everywhere now, planters, that it's like a head or like a little person and the plant is like the hair. I saw these things on Zulily back when Zulily was really Zulily ages ago. And I was like, this is amazing. This is whimsical. It's a little bit creepy. They're incredible. I'm getting them. And like a year, like the following summer, they're everywhere. Trendsetter. I have 2 of them.
It's just like another type of a chia pet.
Chia. I liked chia pets too when they came out. It's me. I started. I'm a trendsetter.
Oh, wait. You started chia pets.
I don't ever think.
Did you make pet rocks a thing too back in the day?
No, but I always wanted one.
Go find you one. There's a whole bunch out there, I'm sure.
For some reason, and again, I think this is the ADD thing. I feel like I have to buy one.
It only counts if you spend stupid amounts of money on it at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. I was getting FedEx dings on my phone today from some company I didn't recognize. I'm like, what the heck is this? It's like, God. I don't know what I ordered.
That's the best. I've done that
like,
before.
I guess I'll find out tomorrow when it gets delivered.
Have you ever bought wall decals that are a little like mouse hole with a little mouse in it, and they're seasonal?
No.
I have. There was a period of time where I would do the whole, like, you scroll as you're falling asleep, and I would go on Zulily and I would find like all of this crazy stuff. And the first time it happened, like the next day I woke up and I had an email from Zulily, like, your order has shipped. And I was like, my order? What order? And then I realized, like, so I would go through and I would like just like put stuff in my shopping cart, but like I would never buy it. But then one night I think I bought it, and I don't know if I intended to buy the whole shopping cart or if I intended to just buy one thing, but I bought a whole lot of things, and it was amazing. It was like getting like a grab bag, only I had paid for it, and I had paid like
too much money for it.
Oh yeah, it was like $150. Yeah, worth of crap.
Yeah,
crap. But
so you should sit back and wonder, like, where are these feelings coming from, and do the work to. Sorry, Dr. Caroline.
It's so frustrating because there is truth to a lot of what she was saying, and her program that I think it's just another like quick fix, like you do this thing and it'll get, like, that part bugs me. But who knows? If in those 63 days she is helping people feel their emotions, not be afraid of them, learn how to regulate them. Okay, that's not a bad.
I do think our minds are much, 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 much stronger than most people believe.
Yep.
And I do think many people, I'm going to say most people, don't want to, or don't know how, or don't have the self-awareness enough to do the work.
Yeah.
And they get given a diagnosis and then they don't know what to do with it. And then it does become a crutch.
It's so funny because even hearing you say that, like, I have such a skewed view, because literally what I do is like my clients, my experience are the people that are doing the opposite of that. So I'm hearing you say that and I'm like, no, that's not true. That's not true. But it probably is true. I'm just seeing
the majority of people would not go to a therapist.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Most people are not willing to go to a therapist.
Yeah.
And of the people that do go to a therapist, I'm sure it's a percentage of them that are willing to actually do all of the work.
Yeah.
Maybe a more majority percentage.
Yeah. Well, but it is true. It's funny because I would say all of my clients want to do the work, or want to be able to do the work, and they do work. My clients, I have been really very fortunate for a long time. I don't know, maybe this is like the Susie Sunshine, in me, but like the only people that I can think of that really didn't want to do the work, they weren't like, it was like kids that their parents were making, like they didn't want to be there. It wasn't their choice to be there. And it's funny. I mean, like, absolutely. Like, do any of my clients do all of what I say? every once in a while I'll get a client that like everything, like anything I suggest, anything, like they do it. And I'm always like so taken aback. But I don't think it's like, you know, I don't think it's because people don't want to, or that people are like, you know, like that they're like blowing me off or not trying hard enough. It's hard. I mean, we all know firsthand, like it's hard and it's scary. And it's also really hard to remember. Like I get people for 1 hour a week and you know, they walk out the door and there's often like, there's, you know, processing that will happen afterwards and different things will happen. And, you know, like throughout the week, they'll tell me like, oh, this happened. I thought of you, whatever. But for the most part, you know, we walk out the door or we log off and then we go back to our lives and we forget.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many reasons.
The week passes quickly and you're like, oh crap. That
was one of the things that I was really interested, you know, when she was I'd be curious to see like really what types of success rates she has with her program. Because at one point she was talking about it and it sounded, the way she was describing it, it honestly sounded like almost like an intensive program. Like it made me think of like day treatment or like a residential program where you go and you're there, like you're doing it every day. Like you're doing something every day. And absolutely, like that's going to be.
Yeah, well, she mentioned like people like they redo the program and they like, because you're never done. You're never done growing. You're continually peeling back layers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Liz Mazzilli. This was lovely.
Thank you, Becky.
And I will get some better memory cards that have more room on them, I guess. Or learn how to format them. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
Never even knew
this is episode 3. There's still a lot of technical difficulties. I'm going to give myself until like episode 12 to have it all ironed out.
Okay. I still feel like that's ambitious because I am not tech savvy at all. So,
well, I hope you'll come back again.
I would love to. This is fun.
Yay! Woohoo!